Well, good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Good morning. I'm Pastor Julia. I am our student ministries pastor, which means normally I get to be in that room back there preaching and teaching with our 6th through 12th grade students. But this morning, I get the awesome privilege of being with all of you guys, especially as we kick off our new tabloid series, which I am super excited about. And not just because we're going to be discussing some of the lesser talked about, slightly scandalous Bible stories, but also because this series is so amazing. It is all about how God's grace works through our mess. Because the truth is, the world is a pretty messed up place. I'm sure in the last few weeks it's felt extremely messed up. But the world didn't just start being messed up out of nowhere. It has been messed up for quite some time. And if you read through Scripture, you'll see how messed up it has been. And yet, despite all of the mess up in the world, God has still been at work. And so through these messy tabloid stories that we're going to be going through, we're going to see how God's grace works through our mess, how God's grace works in spite of our mess, and how God's grace works in the midst of our mess. And this morning, I get to share with you one of my favorite Bible stories. And if you know me, you know I say that about just about every Bible story that I share with you guys. But this time I really, really mean it. I do love this one a lot. It is a story from Numbers, which is my favorite book. And it is a story about this pagan prophet, Balaam, who gets hired by a king to come in and curse the Israelites. He gets outsmarted by his own talking donkey. And then God uses him to bless his people instead. Now, Balaam himself is not a good guy. He's not a character that we should be looking up to or trying to follow his example. But through his messed up life, we can see God's grace at work. And there's really two major moments in this story where we see how God blesses in unexpected ways. And what we're looking at, the big picture, if you're a note taker, you're welcome. I'm giving this to you right from the start. The big picture idea is this: even in the middle of human stubbornness and greed and rebellion, God's grace cannot be stopped. Even in the middle of human stubbornness and greed and rebellion, God's grace cannot be stopped. So let's get into it. I'm going to be reading parts of this story, summarizing lots of it because it's very long. If you want to, I really encourage you to read along. It's Numbers chapters 22 through 24. There's some really good parts in there. But the gist of the story is this. Israel is on their way to the promised land that they've been waiting for and hoping for and anticipating. And they have been wandering in the wilderness for about 40 years now, ever since God freed them from slavery in Egypt. And along the way, they have complained a lot. God's provided for them. There's been moments of judgment. They've complained a lot. They've defeated their enemies. They've complained some more. They made bad choices. They have rebelled. And now here they are. They get to the plains of Moab, and they set up camp. And essentially, they are right on the foot of the promised land, like just about to get in there. And the king of Moab sees all these people, this giant crowd of people, setting up camp in his land. And he has seen what has happened to the other people that they've messed with, right? And how they've been totally wiped out. And he goes, ooh, this is not a good look for me. And so he sends messengers to hire this guy, Balaam, this well-known prophet, to come and curse the Israelites, to bring God's wrath upon them, so that they get wiped out without Balak having to do a thing, the king. Balaam is this pagan guy, really, who communes with gods and basically convinces the gods to do what he wants them to do, like curse people. And so the messengers show up to Balaam's house, and they tell him, like, hey, Balak wants to hire you to curse the Israelites. And he's like, sure thing. Let me go ask God what he thinks about the whole situation. I'll go talk to their God about this. And he goes and he asks God, can I curse the Israelites? And God says, no. No, don't curse those people. I don't want you to do that. And so Balaam, he kind of pulls this. He goes back to the messengers, and he pulls this like, oh, guys, I'm really sorry. I would do it. Trust, I would be there. But God said no. It's sort of like, when you're a kid and you're like, oh man, like I would love to, but my mom said no. Or maybe if you're a little older, you're like, I would totally be there. I would, but the old ball and chain, right? That is what Balaam is basically saying here. He's like, I would be there in a heartbeat. If it were up to me, I would go. But God said I can't. And so Balak comes back and he goes, buddy, I'll pay you whatever you want. I'll do whatever you want. We'll give you anything you want if you just come and curse these people. I'll do anything for you. And Balaam's like, oh, that's a really good offer. Even if, say, just spitballing here, even if you gave me your whole palace full of silver and gold, crazy thing, but even if you gave me all of that, it would still be hard to do what God won't let me do. But I will ask God again, just to see. Put in a good word. But we already know the answer. Balaam already knows the answer to this question. God's answer was no. I'm going to do that several times to keep you guys locked in, so be ready. God's answer was no. But God tells Balaam after he asked the second time, he goes, yeah, you know what, you can go, but you have to say only what I tell you to say. And I imagine it's kind of one of those like, yeah, you can go. You can go just so you can see what happens, right? Like when I was younger, I would get into trouble sometimes, rarely. I would get into trouble sometimes, usually because I was doing stupid stuff, right? And having like little moments of rebellion. And this is funny because my dad's actually here now. But my dad was the kind of person who would be like, you can learn through your own consequences kind of a thing. And so I'd be like, Dad, I'm going to go and do this stupid rebellious thing. And he'd go, yeah, you do that. See what happens, right? That's kind of what God is saying here now. He's like, yeah, you go, Balaam. You see what happens. And so Balaam starts out on his journey on his trusted steed, his little donkey, and he starts going on this road to the Israelites. And God puts an angel on the road to block his path. It's like an obvious sign, a roadblock to block his path. Because we know God's answer to Balaam's question. God's answer is no. Balaam does not see the angel. The spiritual guy who's in touch with the gods doesn't see God literally blocking his path. We can dwell on that for a second. The spiritual guy who says, yeah, I regularly communicate with God, I know what God, I'm in touch with God all the time, doesn't see God literally blocking his path. But you know who does see the angel? The donkey. The donkey sees the angel, and 3 separate times it goes off course or it squeezes past, trying to get around the angel. And the third time it just lays down in the road and is like, I'm not moving anymore. There's something blocking the way. I can't do this. And each time Balaam gets super mad and he's like, what are you doing? Why are you stopping? And he's yelling at the donkey and he's cursing at the donkey and he's beating the donkey. He's not a good guy. He's beating the donkey. And so God gives the donkey the ability to speak for itself. And this is what happens in chapter 22, verses 28 through 30. Then the Lord gave the donkey the ability to speak. What have I done to you that deserves your beating me 3 times? It asked Balaam. You have made me look like a fool, Balaam shouted. If I had a sword with me, I would kill you. But I am the same donkey you have ridden all your life, the donkey answered. Have I ever done anything like this before? No, Balaam admitted. Now, one thing to note, because I feel like it's very important for this story, one thing to note is that a lot of weird stuff happens in the Bible. If you've read the Bible, you know lots of weird stuff happens in the Bible. A talking animal is weird, even for the Bible. I mean, this would be just like if your dog suddenly looked at you and was like, why are you making the choices that you're making? Right? Like, this isn't a normal situation. It's weird, even for this moment. God gives the donkey the ability to speak, but Balaam is so mad and he is so focused on what he wants. He's so focused on getting there to curse Israel, to get all that money that he wants. He is so single-mindedly focused on that that when God gives his donkey the ability to speak, he just talks back to it. And the donkey kind of puts him in his place. The donkey's like, have I ever acted up like this before? Come on, don't you trust me? Obviously something is happening if I am refusing to move on. And that sort of shocks Balaam out of his focus. He's like, yeah, you know what, you're probably right. I can see the error of my ways. And so then, continuing on, then the Lord opened Balaam's eyes, and he saw the angel of the Lord. Finally, he saw the angel of the Lord standing in the roadway with a drawn sword in his hand. Balaam bowed his head and fell face down on the ground before him. Why did you beat your donkey those 3 times? The angel of the Lord demanded. Look, I have come to block your way because you are stubbornly resisting me. 3 times the donkey saw me and shied away. Otherwise, I would certainly have killed you by now and spared the donkey. God opens Balaam's eyes to see the angel that's been blocking his path the whole time. And God makes it very clear in this moment, your donkey is more spiritually attuned, more connected, more willing to listen and obey than you are. You are the one who is stubbornly resisting me. And the irony is that donkeys are known to be very stubborn creatures. But the only stubborn creature that God sees in this moment is Balaam. Because what did God say? God said, no. And yet Balaam is still forging ahead. He still wants that money. He wants that fame. He wants the power, the prestige, everything that comes with it. He wants to pursue what he wants over what God has already told him not to do. And so our first major truth in this story, our first truth is that our desire clouds our obedience. Temptation pulls us off course, away from God's blessings. Even when we are called or warned, even when God says no, our selfish desires can lead us astray. Balaam thinks that he knows better. He thinks that he's the one who's in control. But God shows him quite literally, no, I'm in control. And God's way is better. Always better. Because here's what's about to go down. Balaam is on his way to curse God's people. And he thinks he's the one with the words, with the prophecy, with the power. But God's about to flip the script. Because in the end, God says, yeah, you can go. But you have to do exactly what I tell you to do. And this is how it plays out. Balaam meets up with Balak on top of this mountain cliffside overlooking all of the Israelites camped out below. And he makes 7 altars, and he does 7 really big, great sacrifices, all so that he can commune with God. And really, it's like a bribe. He's trying to bribe God. He's like, look, I built all of these 7 altars. I made these 7 really big and pleasing sacrifices. Wink, wink. But remember, God told Balaam, you can only say what I tell you to say and only do what I tell you to do. And God never said, build 7 altars and make 7 sacrifices. In fact, the only thing that God has really said about this whole cursing Israel thing is no. And for context, if you're at all curious about what's going on in the Israelite camp down below, they are complaining, as they do. They've been complaining for a while. They've been rebelling. They've been stubborn. They've been following their own selfish desires. God has shown them moments of judgment, moments of provision, and they are, like I said, right outside the promised land. Just one river crossing away. It is the promised land, the land that God promised to Abraham, a promise that has been 500 years in the making. They are seeing God's faithfulness and God's plan coming to life right before their eyes. And they are down in their tents going, man, this is the worst. The wilderness is just so boring and there's nothing here and God won't let us do whatever we want. I wish we could go back to Egypt where we could do whatever we wanted. This is just the worst. And even Moses, God's chosen person to lead the Israelites, has just recently had his own moment of rebellion. And so we should see that this little story of Balaam and everything that he's been doing to resist God, that this is kind of like a little snippet, a metaphor for everything that Israel's been going through for the last 40 years. Like, it's not good down there. And so Balaam asks God for his message, hoping for a curse, expecting a curse. And God says, yeah, I've got something to say. Here's what I want you to take back to Balak. Here you go. Chapter 23, verses 7 through 10. This was the message Balaam delivered. Balak summoned me to come from Aram. The king of Moab brought me from the eastern hills. Come, he said, curse Jacob for me. Come and announce Israel's doom. But how can I curse those whom God has not cursed? How can I condemn those whom the Lord has not condemned? I see them from the cliff tops. I watch them from the hills. I see a people who live by themselves, set apart from other nations. Who can count Jacob's descendants as numerous as dust? Who can count even a fourth of Israel's people? Let me die like the righteous. Let my life end like theirs. And this is what I really want to highlight here. Verse 8, where it says, but how can I curse those whom God has not cursed? How can I condemn those whom the Lord has not condemned? This is the emphasis here. This is God's real response. Balaam wanted to curse the Israelites, and God said no. Instead of cursing Israel, God speaks blessings over them. And Balak, the king of Moab, he gets so mad about this. He's like, this is not what I paid you for. This is not what I brought you out for. I'm not going to pay you anything at this rate because you're just speaking blessing over them. And Balaam's like, hold up, let me try again, build more altars, do more sacrifices. We can make this thing work still. But every time he opens his mouth to curse Israel, all he can speak are blessings. And I'm going to share a few snippets from these blessings I think are important to highlight. The whole thing is 23:11 through 24:25, but a few snippets. No misfortune is in his plan for Jacob. No trouble is in store for Israel, for the Lord their God is with them. He has been proclaimed their king. Listen, I received a command to bless. God has blessed, and I cannot reverse it. No curse can touch Jacob. No magic has any power against Israel, for now it will be said of Jacob, what wonders God has done for Israel. Blessed is everyone who blesses you, O Israel, and cursed is everyone who curses you. Israel is down in their tents, complaining and whining and rebelling. And Balaam has been offering sacrifices to God. He's been stubbornly chasing after that money that Balak offered him and asking for those curses. And you know what? Israel probably deserves it. Just looking at everything they've done, their track record's not great. But when he opens his mouth, all he can speak are blessings, because he cannot curse whom God has not cursed. And here's our second truth. God's blessings cannot be stopped. They cannot be stopped. They can't be stopped by human greed, by disobedience, by failure. God's grace is bigger than mistakes. The Israelites do not deserve these blessings. They are a rebellious, stubborn, selfish people. All the problems we saw in Balaam's story are all the problems that they've been struggling with. And we know that they don't deserve it. And Balaam knows that they don't deserve it. And he wants them to be cursed so bad. But God said no. God said, no, I have set these people apart. These are my people. I have blessed them, and nothing can reverse that or take that away. Nothing can touch the people that I have chosen to bless, because they are my people and I am with them. I told you that in this story we see God's blessings in two unexpected ways. The first is this: God blesses through the no's. God told Balaam no. Couldn't have made that more clear. And through saying no to Israel, God's blessings came through. We often don't like to be told no, but the truth is that God's blessings are found in those no's. And we can try to be stubborn and we can try to resist, but just know God's way is always better. And He knows what's going to bless you and what's going to curse you. And His no's are trying to lead you to His blessings. God blesses us through the no's. And the second unexpected blessing is this: that God blesses us when we don't deserve it. Even when we are rebelling and grumbling, even when the enemy is actively going against us, even when it feels like the world is falling apart and nothing is going our way, God is speaking blessing upon blessing over us because we are His people and He is our God and He is with us and He loves us. And I want to take a moment to be vulnerable with you. I don't often do this. I don't like to do this. But I want to share a part of my story because I've been through this. You see, I grew up in the church. I knew I was called to ministry from a young age. I did all the Sunday school lessons, youth group every week, all the things. But right around the start of high school, I turned from my faith. I turned from God. I rebelled. My life wasn't going the way that I wanted it to. God said no to a lot of things that I asked. It felt like everything in my life was falling apart and crumbling around me. And I remember thinking, forget this. I've been following God my whole life, and this is what I get? And so I rebelled. I turned. I cursed God's name. I fell into a really, really dark place, awful place. And I made terrible choices. I did things I'm not proud of. And I grew to really hate everything. And God pulled me out of that, saved me, redeemed me. Praise the Lord for His never-ending grace. But even after that, I remember thinking, yeah, I blew it. There's no way that God still wants me. There's no way that God still wants to use me. There's no way that God is still calling me. I cursed God's name. There's no way that He still wants to bless me. And even though God told me otherwise, even though He reassured me that I was called and kept me going after that, I lived with that guilt for so long. And it was several years later that I was studying the book of Numbers, and I stumbled on this weird story. And I saw how God gave Balaam a very obvious no and didn't let his life work out the way he wanted it to. And I saw how the Israelites complained in the camp and rebelled against God even after everything that He had done for them. And I saw how God chose to bless them even when they didn't deserve it. And in that moment, I saw myself, rebellious and stubborn and undeserving, and yet God still spoke blessing. But how can I curse those whom God has not cursed? How can I condemn those whom the Lord has not condemned? God's grace was so much bigger than my failures. And God's grace was so much bigger than my mess. And God's grace worked through my mess. God blesses us through the no's. And God blesses us even when we don't deserve it. And the truth is, whatever mess you're in, whatever mistakes you've made, God's blessings are bigger than your failures. He still wants to use you. He's still speaking life into you, even when the world expects a curse. And as we close this morning, I just want to give us the opportunity to reflect. As we respond, I want us to think, to ask ourselves, where is God saying no? And we need to listen so that we can receive his blessings. Where have we been rebelling? Where we need to turn and ask forgiveness so we can receive God's blessings. Where do we need to let go of past mistakes so that we can trust that God is still giving us blessings? We'll have our prayer team up here to pray with us, to pray with you if maybe you're still figuring out those no's, or if you're still going through those moments of undeserving. We have an altar in the back and a cross in the back. If you want to spend some time just talking with God, laying your guilt at the cross, because the truth is his greatest blessing has already overcome your shame. We'll have communion stations up front. If you want to take a moment to remember and receive the greatest blessing he's given us, his grace, because we don't deserve it, but he gave his son anyway. He gave his blessings anyway, because we are his people, and he is our God, and he is with us. Would you stand with me as we respond in prayer? God, thank you so much for your blessings that never run dry, for the ways that you are still working through each and every one of us, God. Thank you for your no's, for the way that you know better than us, and you know what we should be pulled away from, God. Thank you for those moments that you speak blessings through the things you tell us not to do. And God, thank you for your grace that still works through our mess, that even when we make mistakes and even when we mess up and nothing is going right, God, thank you for being so gracious to forgive us and still speak blessing over us, God, to not give what the world would expect you to give, but to give your grace and your blessings in abundance. I pray that as we respond this morning and as we reflect and as we go even beyond today and into this week, that we would find opportunities to rejoice when you say no, and to find opportunities to trust that you're still blessing us, God, to receive your blessings in full and know that you are with us. It's in your name that we pray. Amen.